to this webinar, and this is the first webinar in a series of 3. And I'll just quickly say hello. I'm Melita from Institute for Sustainable Futures, University of Technology, and then I'll pass to Jess.
Hello everyone, my name is Jess MacArthur. I am also at ISF at the University of Technology, Sydney. I'm a doctoral candidate with the team. And Juliet?
And I'm Juliet Willits, also from the team from UTS. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so here is our agenda. Welcomes, which we've done in a variety of ways. Thank you all for bearing with the technology there. We're going to talk you through the results of the needs assessment that a lot of people participated in. So thank you very much to those people that filled out that needs assessment. We'll give you the results of that. We're going to do an introduction, very, very simple sort of 101 on qualitative MEL, and then give you some tips and tricks for remote MEL, things that you could grab and go with as of today, some hints and some technological kind of innovations and tools that you could start using straight away. Okay, so that's our agenda. And we've already done a little introduction. So we'll just go into what is the goal of this project. Quite a few of you already will have seen. I'll just start the recording actually.
Already on, Melita, you're good.
Already on, okay, thank you. Yes, so the goal of this project, I'm sure you're familiar with because you've looked at the information sheets that were handed out as part of the emails and the preparation for this webinar. But essentially we're undertaking this study to support you, the civil society organisations as part of Water for Women Fund, to select and use qualitative monitoring, evaluation and learning methods and tools in your work with Water for Women. And we're focusing this piece of work around your engagement with change agents. So even though we ask questions in the needs assessment about your broader MEL processes, we are going to be drawing on that knowledge, that information, but then funneling it as the project goes towards your engagement with the change agents in order for us to better capture and use information about the changes that are occurring for and within change agents and the changes that the change agents observe in their environment, because of course they are key stakeholders and players in the work that you do. Other parts of the work that ISF is doing and Jess's doctoral work engage with different stakeholders, and she can talk to you about that later on. So the 4 key phases that we're delivering this project in are summarised in these 4 dots. There's a hear, listen phase, there's a curate phase, a collaborate phase and a deliver phase. And so essentially we are in this first phase of the project, which is learning from you and hearing about your experiences with qualitative MEL, and also the areas you'd like to further develop and know about, and also for us to provide you with some tools and techniques specifically around using qualitative MEL that will be honed and tailored, curated for your work to measure and monitor gender-related changes, and as I said, with change agents. So we're in that here phase. And after this, we're going to be curating a range of tools and sharing them with you in a way that is very easy to engage with, use, and tailored to your needs. We're going to be piloting the use of some of these innovative tools that I haven't mentioned yet, that the focus is also on travel restricted environments, COVID-related situations. So we are going to be ensuring that the methods that we then pilot are tailored to a context that may be affected because of COVID due to travel restrictions. And then through that collaboration, we'll be delivering on an online platform some tools and techniques and approaches and sharing them back with you by next March. So this timeline will be between now and next March. I think you all know who your change agents are, but just quickly, the civil society organisations you're working with, the government representatives at the various levels, and DPOs, disabled people's organisations, associations, etc. And these are the 3 webinars that we'll be presenting, and at the end of this webinar we'll be reminding you of the timetable of those 3 webinars, which will all be recorded and available to you and your colleagues at a later time. And so welcome to our first webinar of this series. Now I'm going to hand to Jess, who has been very busily analysing all of the data that you provided us through the needs assessment, as well as designing the needs assessment tool. So thank you, Jess.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melita. Yeah, and if you have questions as we go through this, also please feel free to put them in the chat box. I won't be monitoring that chat box myself, but Melita and Juliet will be. So we received responses from 12 people, so thank you very much, through 8 organizations. And so we're presenting back a little bit today. We know that it was a little bit of an time and thinking intensive process, but I hope that it was a helpful one for you to begin thinking about what you're doing with qualitative MAL. So Melita, next slide.
Ta-da!
Thank you. Wonderful. So IRC, congratulations. You have won the book voucher. Is there anyone from IRC? Do we have IRC on? Let's see. Can't see.
Yeah, this is David. I'm here. Thank you. That's exciting.
Congratulations, David and team. Yeah, wonderful. We're glad to be able to support with that. So we'll be in touch over the next little while to figure out how best to get you some books. And we're excited to be able, even if you need recommendations, we always have lots. So yeah, wonderful.
Thanks, Jess.
So thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Melita, next. So who are we thinking about as a fund when we're thinking about change agents? So this is analyzed by organization, and the color coding just means most to least. And so you'll see here, the regional government staff is the main, the most priority one that we're working with as far as change agents as a wider fund, but also government staff in general. So local government staff as well as national. And we recognize that the boundaries between these are blurred, but just so you, we asked you based on your experience to define these as you wished. We also see that there's a lot of work around women's rights organizations and small businesses and enterprises. So 6 organizations are working with those, DPOs, 5 organizations. And so you can see going down, associations, sales agents, for example, and multilaterals, a couple of organizations are working with them. But this helps us to identify who are those main change agent folks that we want to be understanding what's happening for them. So great, next slide. All right, a lot of information on this one. Hopefully it's not too overwhelming. So in the first box, you'll see what are the current gender equality data collection practices. And these are both quantitative and qualitative. And you'll notice that focus groups and interviews, which are predominantly qualitative approaches, are actually what we're using the most. Surveys are also used by 5 organizations. And again, this is analyzed by organization. Participatory activities and workshops also feature. A couple of organizations are using photography and most significant change as well. Now, when we look at how that data is analyzed, a lot of organizations are using basic stats and thematic analysis, as well as case studies, and even down to word clouds and textual analysis. But what we realize is there's opportunities to explore and to support you with further data analysis approaches. And so we'll be compiling and curating those alongside the methods to explore those. So how are we doing this as a fund? Well, phone calls seems to be the priority one. Not surprising. Phone calls are easy. They don't require internet, but also video conferencing, emails, and WhatsApp or Telegram also are quite common as far as technical tools. A few organizations are using Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, Mentimeter, Aquaflow, and then there's a whole bunch of organizations that are using one-off tools. So SurveyMonkey or Kobo, MWater, TerraWorks. So there's a lot of tools that we're using within the fund, innovative tools. And I think it'd be great for us to maybe post, Stuart, we can chat about this, to post on the hub some kind of tips and tricks about how these tools are used, especially those one-off tools. So for those of you using Kobo or TerraWorks or MWater, we'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas on them. So we'll be posting that in the hub over the coming days. Next slide. So when we think about what are we measuring for change agents, and what do we want to measure for change agents, what comes up most commonly is that roles, activities, and actions are the main types of explorations that we are currently doing as a fund. So this is just identifying what are women and men doing, and it's regarding change agents and gender equality. So what are women and men doing? And then a little bit around personal transformations as well. However, the future ideas about what you would like to explore includes a lot more emphasis on, for example, attitudes, organizational changes, and observed community changes as well. And you'll notice that as a fund, we want to get away a little bit. It looks like we are looking to move away from just looking at roles, activities, and actions, which are important, but really think a bit more about the more complicated types of MEL. So that would be things like personal transformations and attitudes. There are also a couple of others, which included things like signs of domestic violence and men's engagement. Additionally, words related to attitudes like behavior or perceptions as well came up. And so we see from this kind of some priority areas where we can begin to support in designing tools and supporting you guys already on tools that you're already using and expanding that knowledge throughout the fund. So next slide. Okay, this is a really overwhelming one, but we wanted to highlight what are the main things that programs are addressing already within their projects for change agents. And so the biggest one is leadership. That's the main, leadership and participation are the two top ones, followed closely by women's economic empowerment and workforce and decision making. So the top three are leadership, participation, and workforce. But you see that there are programs that are addressing things like social norms and engaging men, and gender-based violence and conflict, as well as a couple of organizations that are working with backlash and resistance. So this is important for us to recognize and to note. How do we build on this that we're already working on in the program, and how do we measure this? So that's always the complicated thing. Like, how do we measure engaged men? How do we measure norms and attitudes? And so that's one of the aspects that this is also going to be working on with you. Next slide. So there were a couple of questions related to qualitative research with change agents that came up. And I just pulled a few of those questions from the assessment and put them in here. So one question is, to what extent something looks like? That's a good question. Have you noticed any changes in terms of capacity and involving and conducting project activities? So these are questions that we would like to explore with change agents alongside the other aspects like leadership, violence, backlash, safety. And so we're going to kind of be compiling all that information together to create some simple and useful tools. And we recognize, you want to kind of honor and recognize that many of you are already doing this to a great extent. And for us, our goal is to learn from you. We recognize that you have great experience in measuring some of these things and have innovative ideas. So feel free at any time, if you have suggestions or ideas, just send us your concepts or your ideas. We would love to hear from you. So next slide. So when we asked you about what are your concerns and doubts about qualitative MEL, these were the top kind of 4 themes that came through. So the first one is bias, which is a really interesting and great word. We're going to be exploring that further in our next webinar, as well as analysis and interpretation. I just actually got off a webinar this morning about how do you know if your interpretation is the right interpretation. It was a webinar hosted by the university for qualitative researchers at the at the University of Technology, Sydney. And I think there's some really interesting things that we can pass on to the wider fund from that webinar this morning that I went to even. Balancing feasibility. So we know that qualitative MEL can be really time consuming, can require quality or different types of staff. It can require quality interpretation and analysis. And so how do we do that well and feasibly? And then lastly, the capacity and the confidence of teams. So those are some of the concerns and doubts. Next. This one's also a little bit of an overwhelming slide, so hopefully it's not too hard to see. We asked you what your collective confidence is in collecting qualitative research. And you'll notice that kind of the lowest confidence is really around designing qualitative MEL. And there is quite high levels of confidence around data collection, and some of the other aspects around that. So what we want to do is leverage where you feel strong and confident and helps to bolster where you feel weaker. So co-developing findings, anchoring findings, and by anchoring findings, we mean anchoring them in literature. So connecting them to what other organizations and other groups are doing all over the world. But you have a lot of confidence in sharing back findings and communicating findings as well as data collection, which is fantastic. Next slide. So the selected challenges from your qualitative MEL, I mean, these kind of are connected to concerns and doubts. So one would be time, analysis, interpretation, stakeholder resistance, again, capacity and confidence, as well as designing data and collection tools. So we want to help support you through these challenges. That's our goal as well. Next slide. Oh, there we go. So what would you love to know? These were kind of the main key things. I'll kind of read some of them out. So a wider range of approaches. I'd like to know more about what else we can be doing. Techniques for focus groups, software for analysis, sampling, just general about qualitative MEL and data quality, sharing about results to communities. And what you'll notice that these are in two different colors of blue. The lighter blue will be highlighted in our second webinar, and the darker blue will be highlighted in our third webinar. So wanting to already kind of whet your appetite for making sure you are able to join or at least watch the recordings for the up and coming webinars, because we're going to be answering a lot of these questions, hopefully through those webinars as well. Great. So it's now time. That was a massive quick overview. We will be, again, sending out these slides, and if you have any questions at all later on as well as now, feel free to let us know. But if you want to type your questions into the chat box right now, I would love to try to take them. Let's see. So questions about the needs assessment.
Thank you, Jess. That was wonderful presentation of a lot of data and a lot of great comments from all the CSOs that completed it, and shows also the breadth of approaches that you're taking, which is really helpful. And I'm sure very helpful for the fund as well to do a little bit of a stock take in a sense of these kind of approaches. So any questions at all about the needs assessment itself and anything that came out of that? That's okay. If you don't have any questions on the needs assessment, or they come up for you later down the track, that's fine. We can always answer them as we go into the webinar. And thank you for the lovely feedback, Jose and others. And great to hear that Stuart agrees that sharing your experiences with some of those more unique products on the hub would be a really good idea as well, because I'm sure other CSOs would like to know what your advice is on some of those products that haven't been used by so many CSOs. Okay, so do just jump into the chat whenever you have a question about anything. Now I'm going to hand over to Juliet to give you a little bit of a 101 on qualitative MEL.
Okay, thanks Melita and to Jess. So as you saw, the second webinar will go into this area in more depth, but we thought it was really important to at least provide a little bit of a foundation for what sits behind this word qualitative. And this slide is, I guess, will be familiar for anyone who's done some form of research, master's research, etc., but for others may be a mystery. So at the top, we have the foundation on which research fits, which is epistemology and ontology. These are fancy words for the things that the world is made up of, and some people might see that it's atoms and elements. Someone else might say, no, it's about people and social realities. There are different research paradigms and worldviews, and they are really important for then defining what kind of frameworks or theories are used to underlie whether it's qualitative research or quantitative research. And those theories are a good example of a theory that some of you may be familiar with is diffusion of innovations. So that's people who have studied innovations in multiple different parts of different types of products, and they've seen, oh, there's these different types of people, early adopters, late adopters, and that these particular characteristics of an innovation, and they've developed a theory around that. So that level of theory is often underlying, particularly different forms of qualitative research. And then beyond theory, there's methodology. How are you going to go about actually performing some kind of inquiry? And this is where we then get into, are you going to use more quantitative types of methods or more qualitative, or are you going to bring together different types of methods, either in sequence or in parallel? Once you have a methodology, there's then this question of methods. What are the actual ways that you're going to find something out? How are you going to know something new? And also, as Jess already mentioned from the survey, how are you going to analyze? How are you going to interpret? You've got all this information, but then what are you actually going to do with it? And how are you going to make some sense of it to then see what you think it tells you? Finally, at the micro level, you have just tools. So tools are really more like the technical tools that Jess mentioned, or often a survey is called a survey tool. So this is usually just a component of a method. So that's a broad view of the space within which qualitative research and qualitative MEL sits. And from here, if we move to the next slide, we just want to bring your attention to the huge diversity of different qualitative approaches to data collection. Ethnography might be one that people are familiar with, where people go and immerse themselves for a long time and are just observing and being part of a different world or society. There's also different forms of interviewing, different forms of using either photographs or using video, etc. Biographies, studying people's lives. They are really, really diverse. So I think it's really important for us to think beyond an FGD and a semi-structured interview. I think that's mostly what all of us automatically think of when we think of qualitative, but actually we've got many more possibilities at our disposal and many more ways of knowing, to go back to referring back to that previous slide. So why do we care about this idea of qualitative? That's because not everything that counts can be counted. And in fact, when we're working on gender and social inclusion in WASH, most of it can't be counted. We can't count it like we count toilets and taps. It's much more subtle, it's much more complex than that, and hence why qualitative MEL becomes so important. And also one of the kind of myths we wanted to debunk is that there is not just two sides and they're adversarial and against one another, that you're either quantitative or you're qualitative. Actually, most methods are actually a bit of a merge of both. But if we look at the extremes, quantitative methods are usually about counting, measuring, rating something, they're coming up with scales or indicators of some kind. Qualitative are much more about the quality or nature of something. They often are about looking at experiences, understandings, traits, characteristics, meaning, or stories. But many methods sit somewhere in the middle. And there's an example here where you can collect lots of long narratives of just of people talking, but rather than listen to them and their meaning, you can also count how many times certain types of terms were mentioned. That will give you one view into what kind of content was in those long narratives. Another example is that most qualitative methods, when you're writing them up, you will say, you know, many participants said blah, or few did, or no one did, or all did. Those are obviously quantitative judgments, but they're part of how you interpret qualitative information. So our point here is that they're not isolated and separate from one another. Different MEL methods are actually often some form of combination of a little bit of quantitative as well as qualitative. And then here we have another distinction of deductive and inductive ways of knowing about something. And this is also an important angle in relation to qualitative MEL. So when we're thinking of more quantitative methods, you're usually at the deductive end of the scale. You usually already know what it is you want to know about. So for instance, an indicator in a survey, you've already designed your survey, you've got a closed question with a few options, you've designed and thought about what it is you want to know about. and you're using that framing to then ask a question. The deductive methods are about testing a theory. You think you know how the world works. So for instance, the theory I mentioned earlier, diffusion of innovations, and then you're trying to see how that works in particular circumstances or situations or contexts. Whereas with inductive, which is often commonly associated with more qualitative approaches, you're coming in with, say, a more open mind. You're wanting to explore how is something. You're not assuming that you already know and you already have an answer and that you're trying to test whether something is in this particular way or not. You're coming in more with an open mind and maybe aiming, if you're a researcher, to develop a theory from the basis of your actual observations or the data that you collect. So this is a distinction which becomes really important as we go into further into how do you interpret and analyze qualitative data. Next slide. Oh, I'm good, that's it. So that was your qualitative 101 for today. We will go further in the next webinar, but from here I'll hand back to Melita to focus more on that in the relation to evaluation and Mel. Thanks, Melita.
Thank you, Juliet. That's great. And yes, so now this is in territory that I'm sure you're very familiar with around, well, how often do we collect data and when do we collect data? And I know because you're already all collecting some qualitative data, a lot of these points in the project cycle will be familiar to you. But on the left-hand side here, these are the more common ways in which qualitative data is collected. For that top bar evaluation, often there's the baseline and an end line and often a midline as well. So the dots are indicative of the stage in the project cycle where you would be collecting qualitative data. Monitoring is done across the process and multiple times, hopefully. Assessment might be a one-off, going in and having a deeper look at one particular issue or element you'd like to monitor and assess. In terms of the right-hand side, the timing with formative research, you're doing that research or monitoring to inform your program and your project and drawing on the results of that to design your program. Summative is more at the end and developmental is throughout within the many stages of a program. So just to give you a sense of qualitative data can be collected multiple times and for multiple purposes. We're also very interested in the relationship between your theories of change and where and when you collect data. And so this diagram here just shows that on the left-hand side, you've got the common kind of project deliverables or a cycle.
You've muted, Melita.
Oh, sorry. I had to move my bar so I could see the diagram and I muted myself. Apologies. So impacts at the top and activities and inputs at the bottom on that left-hand side of the blue column there. And then on the right-hand side are some examples of what might be some interventions at those different stages. Again, this is very familiar to you, having all done theories of change. But just to make the point that ideally your monitoring, evaluation, learning strategy is connected to all of those elements within your theory of change, and the indicators suit the type of changes that you're wanting to monitor and collect data on. So you're curating your tools according to the change that you're wanting to monitor, and that is connected to your overarching theory of change. Okay. Now, this slide, just some starting ideas around, well, what does COVID-19 mean for our qualitative research? And we asked you this in the survey, and so a lot of you have come up with ideas around that it is going to make focus groups harder. In some countries, we were very pleased to see that you've said so far not too many changes, because in some Pacific countries there haven't been drastic lockdowns. But if the lockdowns become more severe, then it could make it very hard for interviews and face-to-face interviews. But on the left-hand side here, we have the challenges of that nature around meeting with people and the ability to communicate more easily when you can meet with people face-to-face, the change in dynamic and rapport if you're not meeting face-to-face. You play in verifying and observing will be hindered by not being able to travel. And the topics that we're actually doing Mel on are quite sensitive, and as Juliet said, lend themselves to a very sensitive approach. So it may be harder to find out about changes in gender norms on the phone or via Zoom than if you can actually go and visit a community, for instance. And the other thing that's coming up a bit in the experience of researchers and literature is around who has access to the technology to enable them to engage in a more remote environment. And that has gendered impacts, of course, or a gendered element to it, of who owns a mobile phone or who owns a laptop, etc., but also who has the experience, knowledge, use those sorts of tools. And then, of course, there's the old internet connection issue and being able to actually access people that are far away and remote. So we know there are going to be quite a few challenges for all researchers around the world doing qualitative research, and there's quite a lot of discussion about that. There are also some benefits, and there are people that are writing blogs and articles about there could be some opportunities. We want to support a localization agenda. Potentially this is happening a little bit more through some actors having to stay in their home country and supporting from afar. And also, I guess, in terms of that innovation lens, stresses can lead to higher thinking and creative options. And we have used, as some of you know, through the webinars that we've conducted, we've used a simultaneous translation option where we've had somebody live translating while we've been presenting the Zoom, and being able to just switch channels back and forth. And that, even though that technology may have been available a few months ago, we weren't as ready as a sector, I think, to draw on those options, and now we are. So the question, I'll just go to the chat quickly and just see what people are saying at this point. So thank you, John. You're making a point about some suggestions that sensitive conversations can be assisted when people are not in the same place, makes it less immediate, direct, and people are more comfortable. That is true. And one researcher has actually written a blog and made that exact point, that by being physically separate on some topics, it may be a little bit less emotional, less challenging or confronting for a person to talk about. And there have been quite a few researchers that have observed that. So thank you, John. And Jess has agreed with that. I'm wondering if there's any other challenges or benefits that you can think of from your own experiences so far, beyond those that we presented and that John suggested there as well. Does anyone have any other challenges or benefits for the fact that we have to do research and monitoring evaluation in a more remote modality? Yes, so one challenge that Stuart's raised is calling people in their homes may be an impost on their personal lives. You could also say that some of the monitoring evaluation, the research we've done by visiting people's homes could be an impost, but phoning is similar, different to, say, inviting people to a focus group and then they self-select, they decide to attend that group. Good point, Stuart. Leung has said it's harder to obtain consent forms when conducting research remotely. Yes, so it is a hard process to talk someone through that consent process and ensure that they really do understand what's being asked of them and that they feel comfortable with that. It is a bit harder to explain that from afar. Good point. Yes, Juliet has made the point about costs being lower. If it reduces travel costs, that is certainly the case with a lot of the research that we're going to have to be doing now and that our partners are doing. They are doing it from home. They are doing it on the phone and on Zoom, on WhatsApp. So less travel time, less costs around travel time. But on the flip side, it may be harder to reach certain groups, for example, people with disabilities. There is also literature around the concerns of people with disabilities being unable to even attend some of the sessions that may still be able to be held because of fears of COVID. They're at higher risk of COVID, so they may be more isolated, even at times where you can have some people coming together. A benefit is phone interviews, allowing for greater flexibility when people are available to be contacted. So yes, you can do follow-up, you can set a time, so perhaps there's more flexibility, and on the flip side of Stuart's point, maybe more convenience if people have multiple options of when to be interviewed. Donna's mentioned security and safety of the informants. They're in their own homes, they're using their own online tools, so they don't have people visiting them and coming into their own space. Gay's mentioned the time investment. We've been remotely supporting teams with formative research all year, and online coaching and tools, time availability is becoming familiar with things like analysis over Miro. So the time investment, I would expect, you're saying that's a challenge, but it sounds like you've really been building up the team's expertise in this space. So maybe that's a benefit as well, growing those skills in that area. Okay, there's lots more coming in. Oh, there's 3 more and then I'll move on. John has mentioned there can be protection concerns when knowing about and being in contact with support services, and that can be harder when monitoring sensitive topics remotely. Yeah, so I guess the approach of do no harm is we still need to have that lens and that approach, and how do you support people to get access to support services when you are further away, you're doing that remotely. And Alison mentioned that while travel costs are lowered, some partners have reported that the resources required to support the teams can make the costs higher. So maybe there is a bit of a, and just a reallocation here as opposed to things being cheaper per se. Time will tell as we all adapt and pivot and massage our budgets into a new world order. Thank you for that point though. And then Stuart said it might be easier to reach some people who are comfortable with technology and are more connected, for instance, young people, but older people, or you didn't say this, but some people or certain demographics may prefer face-to-face. That's right. So it certainly, these sorts of technologies using Menti, etc., you can imagine would suit a younger and more technologically savvy group. And also, I mean, there are equality issues that I mentioned before as well around who has access to those technologies. So thank you all for those ideas, and we will be drawing on all the notes that comes out of this. This is part of the consent process at the beginning, by you adding notes in the chat, that we can draw on that and use that to inform the project going forward. Now, this is just a very quick note to say that we're also very interested in ensuring that the methods and tools that we work with you on and forward are informed by decolonising methodologies. And what we mean by that is Well, qualitative MEL can be extractive and reductionist. It can be done in a way that doesn't place the beneficiaries and stakeholders' interests at the centre. And so what we're wanting to do is make sure that we avoid it being extractive and reductionist. And somebody in the needs assessment survey from the CSOs did actually make this point, and I'll just read it out because it really hits the point on the head. So when we asked what has been working well for you, and they said where the intended users are involved in each step so that it's user-centered and fit for purpose as much as possible and able to be used across different contexts, where it's not extractive and people in the community get something out of it. Even better, where the community members do their own MEL analysis and are leading the changes, i.e. a rights-based approach, where it considers downward accountability. So this person has really drawn out a lot of the principles that we will be drawing, that we'll be using to inform the types of tools and approaches that we suggest and work with you on. And certainly that needs to be front of mind in our qualitative research and ethical approach. This book here 20 years ago was written to really call on the research sector especially, but also monitoring evaluation, to challenge our assumptions about how we do research and how information is filtered by whom and how it's reflected back to people. So it will be great through the journey of this project to share some snippets of this approach with you and to have it inform the work that we do going forward. So yes, we will be looking to support and enable decolonizing methodologies through this qualitative research process with you. Okay, so that is the end of the kind of theoretical and framing part of the webinar. I'm now going to hand back to Jess to give you some tips and tricks. Do we need to just have a quick look at the chat and see if there are any more points or questions that need to be addressed now before we move on to our tips and tricks? What do you think? I think we've got some more comments here. Thank you to everyone about the pros and the cons and a bit of a conversation around that. And Tyler's mentioned if working through remote teams, those who do the survey design aren't always able to see their survey in action. It can make it harder to make decisions around cutting questions, adapting approaches, etc. Yes, so that actually also connects to that last point about the who develops the questions, who collects the information and uses it, and that feedback back to beneficiaries, but also the people that are designing and using the tools, and how do you connect those actors together. Great, thank you everyone. Okay, well, I'm going to hand over to Jess now, and we're going to go through tips and tricks for around 20 minutes or so, and then we'll finish up with the next steps for the project. Thank you, Jess.
Great, thanks everyone. Yeah, and just to let you know that my internet is a little bit sketchy. I am joining in from the farm. So if I go out, Melita, you may have to pick up for me, but we hope it should be no problem.
No problem.
Just to let you guys know.
Thank you, Jess. Good luck.
All right, so it's time for another Menti. So if you want to pull up your phone or link on your computer, and again, I think we're gonna have to share the screen. But my question is, what has changed since the 1980s in the way that we collect, think, and share information? So just think about it, you know, like what's changed? I mean, there's some big obvious ones, but maybe you want to think a little bit more about what other things have happened. So I've got my phone, hopefully you do too. Actually, Melita, you're going to have to go into the Menti and just get it. Sorry about that. So while Melita's doing that, you guys can think about it.
It on, yes. Sorry, won't be long.
So we did this activity actually during a workshop while I was in Cambodia. Hopefully that's better. And we had a fantastic overview and summary of all the different types of things that were happening. So it's really interesting to hear from the Cambodian context, and then also hopefully from today's workshop, and to compare and contrast those elements. So just checking to see if it's, yeah, ready. So it should be ready now. So what's changed since the 1980s about how we collect, share, yeah, the internet? It's a fairly major one. Frequency. Amount, social media. Yeah, quicker, cheaper, less paper. Fantastic. Quicker analysis, yeah, can be. Yeah. Greater consciousness around intercultural communication, pardon me. Decolonization, decolonizing methodologies. Later, you able to scroll? Yeah, mobile. I'm not sure what SADD is, but if someone wants to maybe clarify that, that would be awesome.
You can unmute yourself and jump in and tell us what SADD is.
Yeah, the world at our fingertips. I like that one as well. Yeah. Yeah, possibly moving away from commutatory for cheap flights until recently, yes. Yeah. Yeah, this is really great.
So I tried the technique of Googling SADD, and I got students against driving drunk. I got a customer service. So there you go. So much for Google.
That's right.
Sex and disability data.
Sex and disability data.
Fabulous. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Oh, that's good.
Increased focus on self. This is great. Yeah, thank you, everyone. That's really fantastic. You know, I think we can go back to the slides now. I think we all are well aware of all these changes, and Melita even highlighted it just a moment ago when she was talking about the use of automatic transcriptions and kind of simultaneous translations during Zoom meetings. Like, there's many opportunities to use all of these new tools, but part of the challenge is knowing what those tools are and how to use them. So Melita, if you're able to pull up the slides, yes. Great.
Sorry.
Thanks so much. No problem. I'm sorry to make you switch back and forth.
To get back here. I'm almost there.
It's good.
Okay.
No stress. Yeah, great. So we'll just go 2 more slides ahead. Yeah. Great. So what we're going to do today with our remaining time, we got about a half an hour left. And the idea here is to share some really crunchy, useful things with you. So crunchy is my word. The idea, you know, the last 7 months of my research has been working on how do I shift my qualitative PhD online. And so I hopefully have had a little bit of thinking about this and connecting with the wider ISF team and a wider research network as well within UTS. We've collected kind of 5 like really crunchy things that you can do tomorrow to strengthen your QualMel. We're going to be presenting more ideas over the course of the webinars, specifically in webinar 3, so make sure you stay tuned. But here are 5 things you can do tomorrow. So the first one is mobile micro mobile data. So micro mobile data means essentially using the tools that you already use with a team to communicate informally, but using them a bit more formally. So most teams have WhatsApp groups, maybe use Twitter or Facebook groups, Messenger, Telegram, or Signal. There's lots of different groups that people are on. So the qualitative survey that I'm working on right now with the team in Cambodia, it was sent around in a group Telegram chat. And so just great ways to share and collect information. So the first idea is to start with, what is your team already using informally to talk? And then finding ways to maybe add a new chat room within that form, or that informal tool, so that you can collect data formally. And this is primarily looking at working with your own staff, especially for programs which have a wide variety of field staff, but using these informal platforms to collect photos or stories, quotes, or insights. You can also send reminders, say today's Tuesday, it's the day for sharing a photo. Maybe you're already doing this and this kind of seems a bit silly, but this could be a very great way to get this kind of information more rapidly. One thing to note and just to be aware of is make sure to have a discussion about the ethics with your team. So if you're sharing photos in that chat, who can they share them with their friends? What are their photos being used for? If they are sharing, challenges they're having in the field, again, who is going to be able to see that data? Who's going to be able to access that data? And one of the things, yeah, thank you, Stuart, for the question, what makes it micro? So the idea here is that these are short snippets of information. So normally when you're collecting, for example, an interview, you collect maybe 20 minutes to an hour of conversation. And then the idea from that is to then digest that. The micro part is getting it down into short chunks of information. So there's a great paper written this past year by a researcher, his last name is Naimi. She's also done a blog post on the Research for Evidence Research for Evidence blog, FHI 360 blog, about her experiences using different modes of qualitative data collection. And what she found in this academic study of her own data collection was that audiovisual data, so in-person and online, generated more volumes of data than online text-based modes. So this would be social media postings, for example. However, there was not significant differences in thematic content amongst the modes between the in-depth interviews and focus groups. So this means that what she found is that the actual volume of the data, if you do an interview, is significantly more. And if you're going to do an in-depth analysis, yes, that makes sense to have a significant volume of the data. But if you're just trying to get a pulse check or understanding what's happening in the field, the themes that are coming out of these rapid conversations, for example, on WhatsApp or on Twitter or on Facebook chat, are the exact same kind of thematic ideas as what people were getting from the longer interviews. And so that just is to give you a little bit of confidence. If you feel like maybe I'm not sure if the micro way is something that I can do, can I really use social media for this? Evidence is showing that we're getting the same type of thematic understanding from these short micro forms as we are getting from the longer forms. Pros and cons for both, but I want to empower you and encourage you to use these kind of rapid forms of data collection within your teams. And to, we already know this is happening informally, but just to support you in being encouraged to use it formally as well. So Melita is going to share a quick example from her experience.
Yes, this will be familiar to our WaterAid friends. So we actually set up a Facebook group for one of the projects we did. It was a qualitative participatory action research project. And by setting up this closed Facebook group that couldn't be accessed by anybody else from outside of the participants, we were able to share the process of data gathering together and in real time, and encouraged the staff to also share stories about the data that they were gathering, and photos, as you can see, and funny photos. So this was a really fantastic and fun way to gather data and to share it real time. And it's also being used in other projects and other contexts. A lot of you will know the CR ship in Cambodia has also used a Facebook page for a learning platform, and has gone into a lot of detail in analysing the stories and the contributions on that Facebook page. So yes, it is already being done, and this may suit you. Again, the ethics around this and making sure that it's closed. You can see there it says secret group, and also there are issues if some people aren't already on Facebook and don't use it very much. Then it perhaps could be a barrier, but just see if that's something that would be useful to your teams or specific needs. Yeah.
Yeah, and also just to highlight, thanks Melita, that this can also be used with change agents. So there's a program in Bangladesh, which I worked on previously, where we actually got connected latrine producers into a Facebook group, along with several members of the team who were supporting them. And it was a way of sharing their challenges and their struggles and their joys as well. So it doesn't just have to be staff members, it could also be or change agents, for example, latrine producers as well. Yeah, great, thanks so much, Melita. Has anyone used any of these microdata? Feel free to type in the chat box. Has anyone used this formally? So as part of their ongoing mail, we all use it informally, but has anyone used it formally? moderate, obviously. Anyone else? We'd love to hear your experiences because the breadth of it, we have 22 participants today. And that's definitely more than just the 3 of us who put these slides together. So please feel free to share your experiences in the chat. Yammer, cool. I haven't heard of Yammer. Chelsea, what's Yammer?
Yammer is, I don't know, it's like a business one that organizations you can have. It's like an internal social media network.
Cool.
So we have one across the WaterAid Federation, and it's just like Facebook but for work. It's great. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a fantastic. Yeah, that's a great tool, and then you don't have to have it accessible to everybody. Just just in case someone makes it secret or something. Great. Yeah, at IDE we used a lot when I was working at IDE in the Bangladesh office. We did a lot of Google Hangouts. We had Hangout chat rooms for different things, so people could dump information there, not dump in a bad way, but in a good way. Pictures or questions or ideas from the field as well. Plan uses Workplace. Yeah, great. So the idea here is to find out what you're already using, not trying to add more, because the teams are already familiar with these tools. So the more tools you add, the harder it gets for people to be able to share. But if you leverage what the teams are already comfortable with and what you are already comfortable with, especially, yeah, WeChat, fantastic. You're gonna get a lot of data. And I think you guys are already doing this. It's very evident. But I just want to encourage you to do this formally and to add it as part possibly of your monitoring and learning system. Great. All right. Sorry, Melita, make you go through these slides again. So the next one, and again, I already noticed that Gabrielle, you had said something like this in one of the messages in the chat previously, but is using kind of digital interviews and activities. So this is introducing participatory activities, could be Google Slides, Miro, or opportunities for video recording or WhatsApp recording. You can record these options. Have a backup plan. A backup plan is really important. So if Skype goes out, what is your backup plan? Is your backup plan WhatsApp? Do you have the WhatsApp audio recorder app stored on your phone already, so you don't have to troubleshoot in the moment? Making sure you share the questions and information sheets in advance is also a big tip. So it's really hard for people to read the information sheets, for example, on their phone. We've had a lot of problems with that in the work that we're doing in Cambodia with my PhD. So if you can find a way to share that with them in advance, that's always better. Again, use systems that are familiar with when possible. And again, make sure you have a discussion about ethics with your team. So some of the interviews that I've been doing, we designed some Google Slides with Post-it notes, kind of as jam boards. There's lots of different systems out there, but invited the participants to come in and type, watch the responses that I was typing, watch the notes that I was happening as well. And then Melita has another example here as well. So using Google Slides, people can come in and type collectively. So this is great for like workshops, and maybe again, you've already done this. So maybe these are low-hanging fruit, but allowing people to do in workshops or in interviews as well. And this can even include things like photo elicitation, where you pull up a photo or a card. I use lots of cards in my research that are digital cards with little pictures of people on them. So you can pull that up on the screen and allow that to be a conversation. Now, this is not going to work in every case, fully understand, but just to encourage you that these are some things that we can do. So does anyone have any questions about kind of using digital interviews and bringing these participatory activities that we might do in the field into the interviews? I'll just pause a moment here and see if any of you have any experience. Gabrielle, you were saying earlier in the chat about using Miro, I think, for data analysis, collaborative data analysis. This is another great example of that. Do you want to share a little bit about your experience with that? Can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, you can, if you can hear me.
Wonderful. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, at the moment we've got different teams doing formative research, and they're being supported by someone who's based in India. And so the teams are collecting and getting kind of real-time feedback as they're doing it. But then when they've got the data, it's all being uploaded and the analysis is happening over Miro together to really support the field teams doing it. So that's kind of
amazing. Yeah,
I can share.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And for those of you who don't know about Miro or Mural, Again, we can put this information in the hub so that you guys can have access to those tools. There are free versions for a lot of these and also paid versions for some if you want to up the ability and the access, for example. Again, Emily Namey's blog goes into some fantastic pros and cons for using some of these different tools. So I highly recommend, we'll send you slides around, but that blog, that link there is a great place to start if you want to learn more about what her experience has been. Again, she's a researcher in qualitative that has done a lot of research on research methods in exploring these types of things. Great. Wonderful. Teams, yeah. Great. Thank you so much for posting in the chat. And please feel free to post in the chat as well. I can share one more example. So when I was working in Bangladesh, I was working in an area called the Chittagong Hill Tracts, which is a very difficult area to access in the country. And yeah, Lisa charts, thanks. And we ended up basically making Google Slides and Google Forms for all the data collection. So the team would go into the field during the day, they would do interviews, and they'd come back, and instead of being able to have a live face-to-face debrief, we had a post-it note debrief because the internet wasn't so good, but we all posted on the same board and we chatted with each other in the comment section. And then we kind of did some collaborative voting and exercises. So we were doing the debriefing online, even though we had no audio. And it was a great way, a bit awkward, but it worked really well. And we actually got some great data. So another good, hopefully good example of that. Great, let's go to the next tip. Okay, innovative survey tools. So part of my PhD has been looking at all of the survey tools that are available, in which there are many. And I wanted to just highlight two for you right now that we found a lot of resonance within the ISF community. Again, feel free to provide any other ideas or thoughts within the chat box. But I wanted to highlight for you Phonic and Mentimeter. Now, obviously, we've used Mentimeter a couple times today, and maybe if you only used it in presentations, but what Mentimeter is also really great for is doing really easy, quick, visual forms of surveying, which I'm gonna have Melita share a bit more in just a moment. We'll talk about that. And then the other version is a tool called Phonic. There are free options for both Mentimeter and Phonic, so you don't have to have a paid subscription, but the paid subscriptions are quite low cost. They're not so expensive. And we found with the Phonic data, this is actually a survey or a study that the Phonic team has done, so maybe it's slightly biased there, but they found that respondents were giving 3 times longer and 2 times more descriptive feedback when answering with voice instead of text. And so Phonic is a way of doing audio surveys, essentially. So instead of typing, they just log onto the survey system and they just talk into the microphone their responses. And then within the background of Phonic, if it's in, I think they've got 15 to 20 languages. Not all languages will be represented, understand that. But Phonic does have automatic transcription in Indonesian. I checked today, it's just brand new. And I believe in Hindi as well as English. So there's not going to be all languages. They keep adding languages, but the automatic transcription is live. So people can record their responses and then it's going to transcribe their responses immediately. And it can also do some automatic translation as well. So it's just a good tool for you to not have to go through the whole process of hiring a transcriber, hiring a translator. You can just go ahead and send the survey out to your team. In the field, it does require internet. But they can record their voices and send information back. Or for example, if someone's in the field, they can just record the responses by audio and individual responses instead of having to record the whole interview. You're just recording sections of it. So it does require, yeah, just closer and closer to Star Trek, absolutely. But it has been amazing. Like I'm using Phonic for all of my PhD now. I've got almost 200 responses from the Cambodia team. And it's so cool. I'm a little bit of a nerd if you can't tell, but it's really fantastic and I'm really enjoying using it. It's also really beautiful and fun to use as well as a platform. So I want to hand it to Melita really quickly to tell us a little bit more about Mentimeter, and then I'm going to show you the Phonic.
Oh, thank you, Jess. So yeah, as John and Leung has mentioned, yeah, the accuracy of that is going to be the key, because a lot of these tools sound amazing, but unless they're better than Google Translate or something, it's a lot of work to fix it up. And so just, yeah, as she said, the accuracy is pretty good for transcription. So that's very exciting. And I do think that could most certainly be put in our benefits column in terms of obviously written feedback is also limiting in terms of who we get feedback from. So if we can have these voice oriented mechanisms to get data, it'll be much more accessible for a lot of people. So it is really fantastic that that kind of innovation is occurring. And like John said, we're getting closer and closer to Star Trek real-time language translation. Yay. We should do a poll on what year do we think we'll have a product that is word perfect. let's just keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, look, I'll just mention just an example. We use Menti within the staff body here at ISF just to do a monthly very short pulse on how people are feeling, how their work-life balance is going. And so there's some quantitative questions there in terms of people choosing an option. But then we've got the qualitative as well at the end of is there anything that could be done around improving your work-life balance, or that ISF could do to support you, in this time of being remote, around connection and isolation. So by having this little monthly check-in, it takes 2 or 3 minutes, we get the qualitative data, which is so rich and makes sense of the quant that we put up front. And it really is very easy and quick for people to fill out, and extremely easy to set up. The beauty of Menti is that once you've set up a survey, it's very easy to, and people fill it out, it's very easy to duplicate. So once you've set it up and you want to do something kind of regularly, little regular check-ins, the architecture's there in Menti. It makes it very easy to duplicate if you want to do that more longitudinal approach. So yes, I am a big fan of Menti, and we have later on, if we have time, we've got some screenshots of how much these products cost, but otherwise we can add it to the hub and to the chat later on. So that's probably enough on Menti, and I think we're now on to our next tip and trick.
I'm actually just going to share the Phonics screen. Sorry, we talked about this. Just going to share this really quickly. Yeah, so this is the dashboard, or like where you come in for Phonic, and you can set. Hopefully, it's big enough for everybody to see. Maybe it's a little.
Oh, I'll stop sharing. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
No worries. Is it working now? Great. So you can select different types of questions. You've got audio questions. You can also record webcam if people are. But you can do this on your phone. It works on. The biggest challenge with audio recording software is that it often doesn't work on iPhones and Android. Phonic works on both. So I'm going to save you all the time. It took me like a month and a half to figure this out. But Phonic's the only one that works on both Android and Apple and on a browser. So just to let you know. So you can select different types of questions. You can have people select and do audio and text, as well as just audio, as well as just other regular normal survey questions. It's fairly easy. Like you can see, you can just type in the text. You can add a subtitle. The computer transcription, again, there's lots of different languages here. There's even Swiss German, which I'm learning right now. So there you go, would be helpful. I can record my family. You can start recording immediately when someone comes to the next slide. You can make things optional. You can also have a time requirement. So if you need people to record 30 seconds minimum, you can make that as well. And then people will be able to just log into the system. And there are quite a few languages. And if you have a language that you need to put in that's not there for the basic background stuff, so like the welcome, please check your microphone by clicking this button, all of those basic things, just let me know. I've been working really closely with the developers of this when I found it, because I needed it in Kumai myself, and they've been very helpful. And we just kind of send them an email and ask them to add this language. We just kind of type what they would be. So if you want to use this and you need more help, just please feel free to reach out to me. Great.
Beautiful.
So Melita, back to the slides.
Yes. Here we go. Oh, have I gone too far? Can you see that?
Not quite yet. Also, you can probably tell that I'm like a bit of a technology geek. I really love these things. I get really excited about them.
Sorry, I just had to go back through things. Won't be long.
So the next thing we're going to talk about, as Melita pulls up these slides, are some kind of really quick and easy analysis tools. So they're not perfect. Again, none of these things that I'm talking about are perfect. But the idea here is it can give you kind of quick, easy pulse checks. Yeah, adoption. We can talk about adoption in a minute, Stuart. It's a great point. I just keep seeing the chat pop up. But this is textual analysis tools. I'm just highlighting a few here. So Power BI, many organizations that have Microsoft will already have Power BI. Maybe you have Tableau as an organization. You can double check to see what you have. But Microsoft regular 365 suite often comes with Power BI. There's an online free version called Voyant Tools, which I'm a big fan of. But if you need to remove your data from Voyant, you have to send them an email. So that does get it a little bit complicated. And there's another fantastic cool tool called Tapor, Tapor.ca. For those of you who are very interested in learning more, Tapor is a kind of a sorting house, a clearinghouse for all the different types of automatic textual analysis tools. So the idea with this is you can kind of literally, I could show you, but if we have time at the end, I'll show you. You can just copy and paste an interview or a set of interviews. I've even done this with abstracts from academic articles where I've copied and pasted 200 abstracts from a lit review, dump them into Voyant, just really it's just copy paste and identify what are the main words that are coming out of those abstracts. We did this for a gender transformative lit review recently where we tried to find out what's the most common word that comes after gender transformative. So gender transformative, is it approaches or programs or change? And we went to try to identify what that third word is in gender transformative something. And it took 45 seconds probably to do that once it was dumped in. So just, maybe that was me, but it might take maybe 5 minutes possibly to get it kind of all together. But it's really an easy way to do quick, simple text analysis. And again, I'm using this in the research already, not putting it into Voyant because Voyant does, again, store your data until you email them. But I'm using another tool in Qualtrics, which is the software that UTS uses, where it does automatic translation from the Khmer to the English, which is not 100%, but it's not bad. And what we've done is we've developed a codebook in Khmer alongside a codebook in English, collaboratively with the team. And then we can just plug those words into the codebook, identify how many times those words are coming out. And within a couple of hours, you can have a really basic content analysis from a wide variety of data. So the idea behind these is trying to speed up your analysis processes. We know that analysis can be very daunting and a bit overwhelming, but these tools, and we're going to be continuing to present them over the next little while, these tools can make things a lot easier for you. So just to give you a bit of a highlighted example, 2 days ago, I was working on my presentation for UNC, and I had 3 hours, honestly, 3 hours to do my content analysis for the data from the Cambodia pilot because my slides had to be uploaded to the UNC website, and I was able to do a basic analysis pretty quickly. So these are not perfect tools, very much true. Like there's some problems with Google Translate. There are some problems with a lot of these tools, and they're getting better. The more we use them, the better they get. I've had some incredibly funny, Leong said she had some really funny ones. Yeah, I have too. But the idea here is if you're looking for general patterns and themes, developing a codebook, which maybe has an English and a Khmer or an English and an Indonesian Bahasa examples, you can have those codebooks and you can do those in advance with the team. So for example, in Cambodia, we work together to identify what are the main, from the theory of change, going back to the theory of change conversation, what are the main outcomes that we can expect from this program? So we anticipated that confidence would be something. So then we can make a list of words in Khmer for confidence, a list of words in English for confidence and similar themes. So esteem, efficacy, those types of things, and then allow those words to help increase the rate of our ability to do a first cut analysis. This isn't perfect. This isn't going to solve all our problems, but hopefully it makes it easier. All right. Last tip.
Beautiful.
And this comes back to our automatic transcription and translation again. So again, it's not perfect. These tools aren't going to be perfect, but to be honest, not even having a human translate stuff is always perfect either. I've had some really funny translations from humans that have been completely off point. So I think what we need to just be aware is that no translation or transcription is going to be perfect. And we just want to find tools that are going to help make our jobs easier. We already have enough challenges going on at the moment. So that these tools can make things easier, that's great. So I just have a couple of ideas and thoughts here on some really great transcription and translation tools, or not great, but reasonable. Liger, HappyScribe, and Volcomatic are all automatic transcriptions, so these don't go to humans. These go to an online database where they have a large quantity of translated materials between the two languages, and they automatically do transcription and often translation as well. So it's not 100%. Again, HappyScribe, Volcomatic, and Liger, you pay per minute. So again, if you're doing that micro side where you're not collecting the entire interview, but you're just collecting snippets that are important, and you kind of hit record when it's an important part, and you're collecting 1 to 2 minutes, the cost of this is actually not that much, because you're not having to translate all the extra stuff. You're just translating like the main core aspect of the response. Additionally, YouTube and Microsoft Stream allow you to post a private video. So similar to Facebook, where you can have a private group, you can post a private video to YouTube or to Microsoft Stream, where no one can read it, no one can access it unless you share the link with them. And then there's an automatic transcription and translation service in YouTube and Stream as well. Again, not perfect, but it's not bad. It's actually pretty good. But not 100%, but it's pretty good. And then you are able to download the transcript as a Word file or as a text file later, and then you can delete the video. So again, these are not perfect tools, but just for you to know one of the biggest challenges is getting qualitative data that is either in text or in audio into text and getting it translated. And these are a couple of tools that maybe will help make that easier for you. All right, questions, comments, concerns, thoughts in the chat box. Feel free to put them in down below.
Jess, you've mentioned there the better ethics.
Yeah.
What's your point there?
Yeah, thanks, Melita. Yeah, so Liger, HappyScribe, and Volcomatic, they are not accessible in any way to anyone else except for the person that's uploading them, or if someone shares. YouTube Stream, they are logged onto a wider platform, and if it's private, there shouldn't be any issues. But Liger, HappyScribe, and Volcomatic work with academic researchers on a regular basis, and they have a more academic thinking towards the ethics. So they store it on more secure servers, for example, than YouTube and Stream.
Thank you, Jess. That's great. And the other benefit of using perhaps the YouTube option and then fixing the transcription is obviously for people who are hearing impaired. And so that's more and more the videos that we do and the media that we produce, we need to make sure it's accessible. So it's really great that those kinds of options are becoming more readily available. But I am told by CBM that really a professional translation or transcription service for captioning is ideal and preferred, but we could at least try with the YouTube product to begin with and see how good it is. Yeah, ensuring that all videos are captioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if many of you have been watching like a funny, I don't know, a TV series and the captioning is just completely off. So, it's always a funny moment when these things don't line up, but this is getting better. We're getting better as humans at this, and we're getting better as computers at this, so.
Yeah, we can help.
All right, so I think we'll hand it over to Melita, to you for the next steps and kind of any other thoughts.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Jess. And so we don't have any questions at this stage in the chat. So that's quite handy given we've got 2 minutes left of the webinar and we'd like to finish on time. Just to let you know, back to those stages of the project that I mentioned, there are 4 stages. This is our remote tips and tricks and qualitative 101 webinar. And we've heard from you and we've got that information. There's more to do in terms of the analysis of the qualitative part of the data and pulling that together to inform the curation of the tools. So we'll be doing that in the next few weeks. And then we will be presenting our first sort of formative thoughts around that back to you on the 26th of November, which our second webinar will be on. And then our final webinar will be on the 4th of February. And before that, we're going to be working with a couple of CSOs who have identified themselves through the survey, wishing to work with us to trial and pilot some of the approaches and the tools. So today we've talked about, remember that spectrum that Juliet talked about from the the epistemology and the worldview through to the tools. Today we've talked actually at that micro level at the end around the tools. Next time we're going to go back up and look more at the methodological and the methods part of that spectrum, and go into a little bit more detail. And some of these tools will sit underneath those methods, and some of them will support the methods that can be taken to improve qualitative research and monetary evaluation. So thank you very much, Gay, and for your goodbye, and thank you everybody for being part of today's webinar. Hopefully we've given you a good enough sense of where we're going from here. If you have any questions, just throw an email to Jess or I, or to our friends, of course, at GHD. Jose and Stuart have been very involved in this project and process, and thank them extremely for your support so far. Let me just make sure I haven't missed any other. I think we've just got thank yous now, so that's very kind of you. Go well, everybody, and thank you for your inputs, and we look forward to working with you on this project and learning more together. So all the very best, and thank you.